Hello, hello. This is Dawn McCoy with Flourish Leadership Group, where I ignite your leadership to the next level. I'm so excited that you joined me for another discussion about all things leadership. I thought it might be the right time to talk about some exciting ways that we as leaders can help keep ourselves accountable and those who we work with. It is National Job Action Day tomorrow, and I'm so excited that it is a way to talk about what we can do to help not only ourselves be accountable, but those who we serve. So, in other words, not turning the tables on our compadres and our friends and our subordinates, peers, colleagues, but in fact on ourselves to find out how we can be, in fact, more accountable. So, I want you to grab pen and paper if you haven't already. I've got my notepad here and actually ready to hear from many of you here live and on the replay. If you are actually someone who is in a leading role, put a 1 in the box. Love to hear if you're in a capacity where you're in charge of people, a community effort, a project, something where you have oversight and responsibility. And what I think is important that we talk about is how we can be accountable not only to ourselves but to those we serve. So the first is really to talk about some of my own experience and then to jump in a few tenets and then to wrap up. So what I'd like to share, of course, is my own experience being a leader and being someone in the community about making sure I have been proactive and been engaging and been encouraging. And so as a leader, making sure accountability means that I not only am putting in place what I would expect of others, but in fact what I do for myself to make sure that I am serving and being, in fact, accountable to myself. Now, what's funny enough is I collected actually over the years a number of ways that I was doing this. So, whether or not it was checkpoints I was doing with an associate or a secretary, hey, is this working for you? Check in on feedback, or if I was having someone making travel arrangements for me and making sure that the feedback I was giving was timely, or the request I was making of having duplication efforts or types of design put together. What did I need done, and was it being done appropriately? So checking in with people to get feedback about how as a leader I was doing. And I was fascinated because in some instances it was completely clear and others not at all. And so how to make sure that what I am doing is communicating, number one, to really connect with those that I serve. And so I want to encourage you to do the same, to find out how they in fact receive information. That is very paramount because you in fact may be someone who can send a text message, quick email, and highlights and details, and the person on the other end has no idea what you're talking about. It is helpful to find out if someone is really needing to have a face-to-face interaction or a telephone call. Find out what it is that someone else needs so that you can help them serve in the capacity of serving you. I found this actually with an assistant some years ago. I gave her feedback and gave her emails with bullet points. And what she really just needed to do was sit down and talk and really talk through the points. We took 15 minutes on Friday mornings to do a pull-up, and it worked well for her to provide me the service and support I needed by being able to say, let's sit and chat and review, as opposed to me sending her an email with bullet points, because that was how she received the information. So I learned to keep myself accountable as a leader by making sure to be mindful of how she would receive information as opposed to how I wanted to deliver it. So I want you to think about that today as a leader. What do you need to do to provide those you serve with a message that they can in turn receive, and in fact to make sure that you are being mindful of how that is carried out. Not only is it important to remember that you have to be an effective communicator, that two-way collaboration, communication goes hand in hand, and in fact that's the second point, collaboration. So that as a leader, you're going to be collaborating with different people, stakeholders. You're going to be collaborating with peers, C-level, people who are maybe subordinates or otherwise, or external stakeholders. So think about it. You have all sorts of different ways you need to conduct yourself. And I had a funny thing years ago. One of my aunts referenced that I had the delicate art form of being able to handle myself in both the boardroom and the blacktop in the boardroom. So being able to handle oneself in various situations. In other words, learning how to collaborate across different spectrum and groups and bring people together to find out about how you can in fact make a connection happen. That's a future point, but making sure that you're being mindful about how to do that and very clear about how you're going to collaborate. So, how will you do that? Well, quite honestly, thinking about collaborating across a project. So, if you're going to have shared duties, talk about who will have those shared duties. If you're going to collaborate across resources, if in this case a subordinate that I had in sharing a secretary with different teams, if that's what you need to talk about, then do so. Talk about how that happens. How does that collaboration happen? If your two organizations coming together to merge resources, how does that end up happening as well? So that you're thinking about making sure that you're accountable to engaging different people, engaging different groups, and building the collaborative ties across time. So we have to think about how we're not only doing what we can to be mindful and resourceful, but really collaborating at that everything coming together. And remember, this is like the layers. If we have communication happening first and making sure we have that open dialogue, and then we're building on that with collaboration, that connection is the last step. And making sure that we're thinking about how we're connecting with people. It goes back to that first point about communicating and having that open dialogue, but really connecting with people where they are. Some people may have never had an experience of working on a giant collaborative project. I know I experienced that some years ago. I had someone who was in a group working on a group project, group dynamics all taking place, and I realized that there were some in the group who had never had a collaborative group experience previously. Now, I didn't marvel at it. I know it happens, but certainly being mindful that it was a teachable moment and to learn how we could make those connections happen. So everybody putting pencils down, paper away. Let's just get out and have some pizza. Let's sit down and talk about what we can do over tea. Let's just sit down and put our pencils away and have dialogue and talk about connecting. So I want to ask you how you can help yourself as a leader. Be accountable to making sure you are doing this with those you serve. You have an obligation. I know I do. We have obligations to make sure that those who we work for, yes, in a servant leadership mode as opposed from a top down, that we are thinking about how we can help others and be mindful, lift up others, lift up organizations, and make sure to be overall enriching to those we serve. Again, this is Dawn McCoy with Flourish Leadership Group, and I just wanted to take a few moments today to just pause and really have you think in earnest about how you can be someone who is on National Job Action Day helping people, whether or not you have employees or subordinates, peers, assistants, associates, or otherwise, that you're thinking about how we can make this a day of action. So I want to challenge you. Actually, in the next day, tomorrow, National Job Action Day, I'm going to be posting all sorts of goodies on my page here, so please stay tuned to facebook.com Dawn McCoy Books for some updates and some interesting dialogues, and as well just resources, because we need to be mindful about how we are gathering information, getting information, receiving and sharing as leaders. If you'd like to learn more about what I do, please turn attention to flourishleadership.com, and you can find out about resources, ebooks, and other fine information that should be helpful along the way. So that's all I have for this evening. I wanted to just share with you briefly and to bring up to speed, because it is a time of being able to acknowledge how workers are in the workplace, but we also have leaders in the workplace to make sure that they have action. So go forth. I'm so excited of being able to bring a message to you. Tune in again next week, 8 p.m. Eastern, for Flourish Leadership with Leadership Reflections, Dawn McCoy. And until we meet again, be enlightened, be enriched, be empowered.